Alright guys, I'll welcome you once again to this graphic design from basic to pro level training. And I'm glad that we are already going into the section 2 of this whole training. This is going to be about the principles and elements of design. So as you can see, we are moving forward. So when I say forward ever, let somebody say backward never. You can drop that in the comment section below. Forward ever, backward never. So my name remains Damilola, but you can call me Da Fresh. So today we're going to be looking at the principles of design. So without wasting too much of our time, let's get straight into it. So what is the definition of principles of design? The definition of the principles of design. The principles of design are the rules a designer must follow in order to create an effective and attractive composition, right? So these are the rules. There are rules that a designer must follow, right? Graphic design, like every other discipline, has strict rules that should be adhered to by a designer, right? By designers or whatever. The thing is this: there is a proverb that says, in a society that does not have law, that does not have rules, does not have sinners, like Yoruba will say, ìlú tí ò bá ti sí òfin kò ṣẹ̀ṣẹ̀. So let those who do not understand Yoruba explain to those who understand Yoruba. So basically that is no. We also have Newton's law of motion and all of these things. How something will cause something to happen, and if one thing is not done the right way, the other thing will not turn out good enough, right? So definitely the same thing applies to us as graphic designers. These rules, there are rules that we need to adhere to, right, as designers, in order for us to be able to create good and functioning designs. And these rules work beneath the surface to make the work stable and balanced. So this, if you remember in some of our previous classes, I talked about designers working like architects, right? Now let's say as an architect, you have come up with the plan, you have created the plan and everything, so you want to go and start executing. So you need a foundation, right? Before you build anything, you need to first of all lay the foundation. So if the foundation is not well laid, you know that what you are building, it is Ọlọ́run ló wà, it is now in the hands of God, right? So but if your foundation is well laid, you are sure, you will be rest assured that the building is going to be solid, right? So the foundation is not what you see, right? The foundation is just there, but the building is actually on the foundation. So the reason why the building looks very attractive and very okay is because the foundation itself was perfectly laid. So that's it on the definition of the principles of design. Now we have, so these principles, we have a handful of these principles actually, right? But the most popular ones are the basic sevens. Like you will now hear people say the 7 principles of design, right? Like, because those are the most basic ones that every designer definitely just have to use, no matter how whack you are as a sorry you cannot be a whack designer if you cannot know the principles of design if you are a whack designer, right? So if you know the principles of design, you are no longer a whack designer, right? But what I'm trying to say is that as a designer, you just have to know at least these 7 principles. Even if you don't know everything, you need to know these 7 principles, right? I have listed about 10 of them here, but I'm just going to be giving us an example for that 7 principles, right? So we have contrast, and this is not this is in no particular order. Like, it's not like I'm saying that contrast is the first one, and no, I'm just listing them out randomly, right? So we have contrast, we have emphasis, we have hierarchy, we have balance, we have principle of white space, we have principle of movement. Wait, something is moving, something fishy is going on. I didn't plan that actually, but you see, something is moving. That's the principle of movement. We have the principle of repetition, we have the principle of unity, we also have the principle of proximity. We have more than this 9. Okay, I think this is 9. So we have more than 9. But this is the list I'm going to be giving you, and I'm going to be explaining and breaking down 7 of it for us in this class. So contrast is the difference between 2 or more elements in a composition, right? Contrast is that thing that tells you this is different from this, like this is this and that is that, right? That is contrast. However, people usually feel like contrast is only about color, like the only way you can create contrast in design is through color. Actually, contrast is mostly about color, actually, right? So contrast is like the way the background of your layouts and the elements of your layout, the way they relate with each other, how different is it to each other, right? So which is the background you are using and the color of your text has to be contrasting in order for the viewer to be able to access your information clearly. So contrast is for accessibility, it also works for eligibility. And also this contrast and the principle of contrast, the principle of emphasis, the principle of hierarchy, and some of them have some similarity, right? So I'm going to be explaining that as we go. So contrast can also be by color, it can be by size, shape, or typography. And here are some examples. You can see we have contrast by color. You can see how contrasting this layout is. You can see that the background and the text are highly contrasting. Like you can see the background and you can see the text clearly. However, you can see that I drew this contrast very, very close to the purple background here that leads to bicolor. You can see that you cannot see the letter T, the ending of this letter T on this color purple. Why? Because it is the same color. So there is no contrast within those two elements. There is no contrast, there's nothing differentiating them. So the color is the same. So everything is just going to look the same, right? So you want to make sure that the colors you are using in your designs are contrasting to each other, the background and the elements, right? And also we have contrast by size, right? So you can see how we use sizes to differentiate this element. You can see that one is the biggest, followed by another, followed by the smallest, right? That is contrast by size. Also we have contrast by shape. So we also use contrast, we also use shapes to differentiate elements. Like this element is different from this particular element. So you can also know that by the use of shape. And also we have contrast by typography. So the way you lay out your typography, like we know that this is the title, we have the subtitle, and then we have the body of text. That is one form of contrast. Okay, so now this is an example, actually, right? So putting all of these things into work, right? Putting it into play. This is let's now point out the contrast that we have here. The background and the elements are super contrasting because the background is light and then the elements on it are really coming out well, right? So that is number one, contrast by color. Another contrast by color that we have here is the call to action. So we also have the principle of contrast by color in that call to action. Another thing that we still have, we also have contrast by shape. On that call to action, you can see that we are using a rectangular shape, rounded with a rounded edge, right? So that is contrast by shape. Also, if you look at the title of the design and everything, the title is like the biggest, right? So that is also contrast by size. So you can see the amount of contrast we have in this design alone. And you also get to see how this works in other principles as well. We are going to use the same design to explain some other principles as well. So because I told you there are some similarities with contrast, emphasis, hierarchy, and um some other principles like that. So as you can see, this is also contrast by color, as in the same design, the same layout and everything, but just the different usage. You can see just different usage. So we just switch the whole thing now. So we switch it up. Like we now use purple as the background, using white and yellow as the foreground colors, and everything is highly contrasting. So depending on the mood, depending on the on the emotion and feeling you want to evoke, because you can see that these two designs, they evoke two different feelings, right? So they evoke two different feelings. So you want to know who you are communicating to and how you want to communicate to them, and then you know the right kind of principles to use and how to use them, right? Because we are using the same principles here, but we are using them in a different manner, right? This is emphasis. Emphasis deals with the impact of an object in a design, right? Emphasis is a strategy that aims to draw the viewer's attention to a specific element. So there is something inside your design that you want the the viewer to see as this thing is important. It get weight. Come and see now. You understand? So that is emphasis. Like you are laying emphasis on something. So that is emphasis. So we also have emphasis by color. We have emphasis by size. We also have emphasis by shape. We have emphasis by line, right? So how does this now come into play here? Emphasis. Well, if we are really talking about emphasis here, the number one thing that has more emphasis is this call to action, right? The call to action has a very clear and sharp emphasis, right? And also that and that is emphasis by color, by the way. That is emphasis by color, by the way. So we also have emphasis by size, which is the title of the design. You can see when I say these principles have similarities, you can see that I chose to use this same design in order for us to just kind of get the similarity, but we should not confuse them, because at times this whole thing might be confusing, but we should know what we are using what for. So at times we get to use contrast alone for a particular thing, and then we get to use emphasis alone for a particular thing, and then we get to use hierarchy, but they have some similarity, right? So it might be confusing for a designer at times to kind of differentiate them or something. It's just your own the way you use them that matters, right? So that is emphasis, right? That is the principle of emphasis. So let's look at hierarchy.